Jake wiped down the last table in his section and checked his reflection in the polished glass wall. His black uniform was crisp, his name tag straight, and his dark hair combed neatly back. He had worked at the Golden Pavilion for 3 years now, and he took pride in doing his job well. The restaurant floated at the heart of Harmony Station, a massive diplomatic hub where species from across the galaxy came to talk, trade, and make deals. The Golden Pavilion served only the most important guests. Ambassadors, military commanders, corporate leaders, and royalty all dined here. The food was excellent, the view of space was beautiful, and the service was expected to be perfect. Jake was one of 12 human waiters on staff. Most of the other servers were from species that the galaxy considered lower tier. Humans were new to the galactic community, only making contact 40 years ago. They did not have powerful weapons, ancient cultures, or special abilities. They were seen as useful workers but nothing more. Bate Palmer, the restaurant manager, walked over to Jake's station. She was a tall woman with red hair pulled into a tight bun. Her eyes were sharp, and she noticed everything. "Jake, you have the Emperor's table tonight," Bates said quietly. Jake felt his stomach tighten. "Which Emperor?" "Emperor Axe of the Draconian Imperium." Jake had never served a Draconian before, but everyone knew about them. They were one of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. They looked like the dragons from human myths, with scales, wings, and the ability to breathe fire. They were proud, ancient, and they considered most other species to be beneath them. "Understood," Jake said. He kept his voice calm even though his heart was beating faster. "He is bringing his offspring," Bate added. "It is young, so be prepared for anything. Do not make mistakes tonight, Jake." "I won't," Jake promised. Bate nodded and walked away to check on the other servers. Jake took a deep breath and reviewed everything he knew about Draconian customs. They valued strength and directness. They did not like small talk or false smiles. They expected service to be quick and silent. The main doors opened and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned. Emperor Axe entered the Golden Pavilion. He was massive, nearly 12 feet tall even when walking on all four legs. His scales were deep purple with gold edges that caught the light. His wings were folded against his back, and his tail swept behind him like a living weapon. His eyes glowed with an inner fire, and his presence filled the entire restaurant. Behind him walked 6 guards in ceremonial armor. They carried energy weapons and watched everything with cold, calculating eyes. And between the Emperor's front legs trotted a small dragon. Jake stared. The young dragon was barely the size of a large dog. Its scales were bright blue with hints of silver, and its wings were still too small for flight. It looked around the restaurant with wide, curious eyes. When it saw Jake standing at attention near his table, it chirped softly. The Emperor moved to the reserved table near the viewing window. The guards took positions around the perimeter. Jake walked over with smooth, professional steps. "Welcome to the Golden Pavilion, Your Imperial Majesty," Jake said with a slight bow. "My name is Jake. I will be serving you this evening." Emperor Axe looked down at him. The dragon's eyes were like molten gold. "You will bring the prepared meal. You will not speak unless asked a question. You will not touch the young one." "Yes, Your Majesty," Jake said. The Emperor settled onto the specially reinforced seating platform. The young dragon climbed up beside him but kept looking around. Its eyes returned to Jake again and again. Jake went to the kitchen and returned with the first course. Draconian food was very different from human food. It was mostly raw meats, certain crystals that provided minerals, and a thick liquid that smelled like copper. Jake set everything down exactly as he had been trained. Watched him the entire time. Jake noticed that the young dragon was studying his hands. Every time Jake picked up a plate or glass, his head tilted slightly. When Jake placed a dish in front of the Emperor, the young dragon chirped again. "Quiet," the Emperor said to his offspring, made a small huffing sound but obeyed. Jake stepped back and waited at his station. Other aliens in the restaurant had started talking again, but their voices were quieter than before. The presence of a draconian emperor made everyone nervous. Over the next hour, Jake brought course after course. The Emperor ate in silence. The guards never moved and kept watching Jake with bright, intelligent eyes. At one point, Jake had to reach across the table to refill a crystal goblet. As he did, stretched out one small clawed foot and gently touched Jake's sleeve. The touch was light, curious. The Emperor's head snapped around. No. The young dragon pulled back immediately. Jake finished pouring and stepped away. He noticed that looked sad, its head lowering slightly. Something about that expression made Jake's chest ache. The young dragon was just curious. It wanted to explore and learn, but it was being forced to sit still and be silent in a world that was probably very strange and boring to a child. Jake remembered being young and having to sit through long, formal dinners with his parents. He had hated it. When he brought the next course, Jake made sure to move a little slower. He let see how he carried the tray, how he placed the dishes. The young dragon's eyes followed every movement. As Jake set down a plate of crystallized minerals, he caught eye and smiled. Just a small, friendly smile. His whole body seemed to light up. Its tail wagged slightly, and it made a happy chirping sound. "Silence," the Emperor commanded. But Jake saw that the Emperor was watching him now too. Those golden eyes studied Jake with new interest, though his expression remained cold. The rest of the meal continued without incident. Jake served perfectly. The Emperor ate. The guards stood watch, and watched Jake whenever its father was not looking. Near the end of the meal, started to get restless. The young dragon shifted on the platform, looking around the restaurant. Its eyes fixed on the kitchen observation window where chefs could be seen working. The window showed the cooking area. Flames danced on plasma heating elements. Chefs moved quickly, preparing meals for the other tables. His eyes grew wide. The young dragon loved fire. That was clear from the way it stared at the dancing flames. Jake noticed but thought nothing of it. Young dragons were fascinated by fire. It was natural. He had no idea that in just a few minutes, everything would change. The young dragon began to slide down from the platform. The Emperor was speaking quietly to one of his advisors and did not notice right away. Moved toward the kitchen window, drawn by the bright flames and the movement. Jake was clearing dishes from a nearby table when he saw the young dragon walking closer to the kitchen area. Something in his chest tightened. The observation window was close to the cooking stations. It was close to the heat and the equipment. He started moving toward, his server instincts telling him that something was about to go wrong. And then he heard it, a sharp hissing sound, a mechanical groan. Jake looked up just in time to see the coolant pipe above the cooking station rupture. Superheated vapor exploded outward in a white cloud, spraying directly toward the kitchen window. Directly toward. The young dragon froze, its eyes wide with fear. Jake did not think. He just moved. Jake's body moved before his mind could catch up. He dropped the dishes in his hands and ran. The sound of breaking plates was lost in the sudden roar of escaping vapor and the screaming alarms. Stood frozen in front of the observation window. The young dragon's eyes were locked on the white cloud of superheated vapor rushing toward it. The temperature was hot enough to melt metal. It would kill the young dragon instantly. Jake reached in 3 steps. He grabbed the young dragon around its middle and threw himself backward. They hit the floor hard, and Jake rolled, keeping his body between the vapor and the small dragon in his arms. The heat hit him like a wall. Jake felt his uniform burn. His back and arms erupted in pain as the superheated vapor touched his skin. He clenched his teeth to keep from screaming and curled around. The young dragon made a terrified chirping sound and pressed against Jake's chest. "It's okay," Jake gasped. "You're okay." The vapor cloud dissipated as emergency systems kicked in. Foam sprayed from the ceiling. Barriers dropped over the kitchen windows. The alarms changed from a steady wail to a pulsing warning tone. Jake lay on the floor, still holding. Every breath hurt. His back felt like it was on fire, but the young dragon in his arms was unharmed. Then came the roar. Emperor Axe's bellow shook the entire restaurant. The sound was rage and fear mixed together. Jake heard heavy footsteps running toward him. He tried to move, but his body would not respond. The pain was too much. The Emperor's massive form appeared above him. Those golden eyes were blazing now, literally blazing with fire. Smoke curled from the Emperor's nostrils. The Emperor roared. The young dragon chirped in response and tried to squirm out of Jake's arms. Jake let go and crawled toward its father. Strong hands grabbed Jake and yanked him to his feet. Pain exploded through his back and arms. He cried out and nearly fell, but the hands held him up. Jake looked and saw two of the draconian guards holding him. Their faces were twisted with fury. "Assassin," one guard snarled. "You tried to harm the young one." "No," Jake tried to say, but the word came out as a weak gasp. Emperor Axe was examining, running his claws gently over his offspring's scales. The young dragon seemed unharmed but scared. It kept chirping and looking back at Jake. "The human attacked the prince," another guard said. "He should be executed immediately." Jake's vision was starting to blur. The pain was getting worse. He could feel wetness on his back where the burns were worst, but he needed to explain. He needed to make them understand. "I didn't," Jake managed to say. "The pipe I was protecting." "Silence," the first guard growled and tightened his grip on Jake's arm. More people were running over. Jake saw Bates' horrified face. Other staff members stood frozen. Several alien guests were watching with fascinated expressions. "Show me," the Emperor commanded. One of the guards produced a small device and held it up. A holographic display appeared in the air, showing security footage from 30 seconds ago. The recording played. Everyone watched as the coolant pipe ruptured. The vapor cloud exploded outward, stood directly in its path, frozen with fear. And then Jake appeared on screen, running at full speed. He grabbed the young dragon and rolled them both away from the deadly cloud. The footage showed Jake's back smoking as the vapor touched his uniform. It showed him curling around, protecting the young dragon with his own body. The footage ended. Silence filled the restaurant. The Emperor stared at the hologram. Then he looked down at Jake. The fury in those golden eyes had changed to something else, something that might have been confusion. Made a sound, a desperate, unhappy sound. The young dragon pulled away from its father and rushed to Jake. Before the guards could stop it, wrapped itself around Jake's legs, being careful to avoid his burned areas. The young dragon made soft crying sounds and pressed its face against Jake's knee. "No," Emperor Axe said quietly, "release him." The guards immediately let go. Jake nearly fell, but he locked his knees and stayed upright, was still wrapped around his legs. Bait arrived with the station's medical team. A small robot scanner flew around Jake, beeping urgently. "Second-degree burns across his back and arms," the medical robot announced. "Immediate treatment required." "Take him," the Emperor commanded. "Best care I will pay." The medical team moved forward with a stretcher. Jake started to lower himself onto it, but would not let go. The young dragon's claws were hooked into Jake's pants, and it was making distressed sounds. "Release him," the Emperor said. The young dragon shook its head. Jake looked down at the small dragon clinging to him. Even through the pain, he could see that was scared. The young dragon had almost died. It did not want to be separated from the person who had saved it. "It's okay," Jake said softly. His voice was rough with pain, but he kept it gentle. "I need to go get fixed up, but I'll be okay." Looked up at him with wide eyes. "I promise," Jake said. "You're safe now." The young dragon slowly loosened its grip. It made a questioning chirp. "Your father is here," Jake said. "He will take care of you." Looked back at Emperor Axe, then back at Jake. Finally, it let go and stepped back. Jake nearly collapsed onto the stretcher. The medical team immediately began working on him, spraying something cool on his burns. The relief was instant, but the pain was still terrible. "Wait," the Emperor said. Everyone stopped. The Emperor walked closer to the stretcher. He looked down at Jake with those impossible golden eyes. "Why?" the Emperor asked. "Why did you risk your life?" Jake's vision was getting fuzzy. The medical robot had probably given him something for the pain, but he understood the question. "It was the right thing to do," Jake said simply. The Emperor stared at him for a long moment. Then he looked at his offspring, was standing very still, watching Jake being loaded onto the stretcher. "Go," the Emperor told the medical team. "Save him, whatever the cost." As the medical team carried Jake away, he heard making sad crying sounds. He tried to lift his head to look back, but darkness was pulling him down. His last thought before unconsciousness took him was that he hoped the young dragon would be okay. When Jake woke up, he was in the station's medical bay. The ceiling above him was white and clean. Machines beeped softly around him. His back and arms felt tight, like they were wrapped in something. He turned his head slowly and nearly jumped in surprise. Was perched on a chair beside his bed. The young dragon was curled up, its tail wrapped around its body, fast asleep. Emperor Axe sat in a much larger chair on the other side of the bed. The massive dragon was awake, watching Jake with those golden eyes. "You are awake," the Emperor said quietly. "Yes, Your Majesty," Jake said. His voice was rough. "The doctors say you will recover fully. The burns were serious but not permanent." "That's good," Jake said. Silence filled the room. Jake did not know what to say to an emperor, especially one who was staring at him like he was a puzzle that could not be solved. "My offspring would not leave," the emperor finally said. "It insisted on staying here. I could not separate it from you." Jake looked at the sleeping young dragon. "I'm sorry for causing trouble." "You saved its life." "Yes." "You could have died." "Yes." "Why?" Jake thought about the question. He thought about all the complicated answers he could give. But in the end, there was only one truth. "Because it needed help," Jake said, "and I could help, so I did." The Emperor was quiet for a very long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer somehow. "In my culture, such an act would be considered foolish. To risk your life for another without promise of reward or benefit, we do not understand it." "I didn't think about reward," Jake said. "I just saw someone in danger." "Someone," the Emperor repeated, "is not of your species, not even close. You had no obligation to it." Jake looked at the sleeping young dragon again. It didn't matter. It was a child in danger. That's all that mattered. Emperor Axe leaned back in his chair. The metal groaned under his weight. He was silent for so long that Jake thought the conversation was over. Then the Emperor said something that changed everything. "Perhaps I have been wrong about your kind." Jake spent 3 days in the medical bay. The doctors used advanced healing technology that was far beyond what most humans could afford. His burns healed quickly, leaving only faint marks on his skin that would fade with time. Never left his side. The young dragon slept on the chair next to Jake's bed. When Jake was awake, would climb onto the bed and curl up near him, being very careful not to touch the healing areas. The young dragon would make soft chirping sounds and watch Jake with bright, curious eyes. Emperor Axe visited every day. Sometimes he stayed for hours, sitting in the reinforced chair and watching his offspring interact with the human who had saved its life. The emperor rarely spoke, but his eyes were always thoughtful. On the second day, Jake tried to teach a simple game with his hands. He would hide a small piece of fruit in one hand and let the young dragon guess which one. Loved it. The young dragon would sniff at both hands, then tap one with a claw. When it guessed right, would make happy chirping sounds and do a little dance. Emperor Axe watched this game with a strange expression on his face. In all my years, I have never seen bond with anyone so quickly, the Emperor said, not even with its own kind. Jake smiled at the young dragon. It's a good kid, smart too. It is the heir to the Draconian Imperium. One day it will rule over billions. Right now, it's just a kid who likes games and gets excited about guessing right, Jake said. The ruling stuff can wait. The Emperor was quiet for a long time. You see it as a child first. That's what it is, isn't it? Yes, the Emperor said slowly, but most people see the crown first. Even I sometimes forget. Jake looked at the Emperor. That sounds lonely for both of you. Emperor Axe did not answer, but something shifted in his golden eyes. On the third day, Commander Lisa Hayes came to interview Jake. She was the head of station security, a tall woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes. She brought recording equipment and a tablet filled with data. "Mister, I need to ask you about the incident," she said, sitting down across from his bed. Of course, Jake said, was napping on his lap, and he kept one hand gently on the young dragon's back. The coolant pipe failed due to poor maintenance. The engineering crew had missed 3 scheduled inspections. We are taking action against them. It was an accident then. Yes, a preventable accident, but an accident. Commander Hayes looked at her tablet. I have reviewed your service record. You have worked at the Golden Pavilion for 3 years. No incidents, no complaints. Your managers say you are reliable and professional. I try to be, Jake said. What made you react so quickly? Jake thought about it. I saw the young dragon getting close to the kitchen area. Something felt wrong. When I heard the pipe breaking, I just moved. I didn't really think about it. You moved fast enough to save a life, but not fast enough to avoid injury yourself. Was smaller and closer to the danger. Someone had to do something. Commander Hayes studied him for a moment. You are aware that the station wants to give you a commendation for bravery. That's not necessary, Jake said quickly. I am afraid it is necessary. You saved the life of the draconian heir on our station. This has diplomatic implications. Jake had not thought about that. He had just been focused on recovering and making sure was okay. Word has spread throughout the station, Commander Hayes continued. Many people want to meet you. Some are calling you a hero. I'm just a waiter, Jake said. I'm not a hero. You ran into danger to save a child. That is the definition of heroism. Jake did not know what to say to that. He looked down at the sleeping dragon on his lap. I just did what anyone would do. No, a deep voice said from the doorway. That is where you are wrong. Emperor Axe entered the room. Commander Hayes immediately stood and bowed. Your Majesty, she said. Commander, leave us. Commander Hayes gathered her equipment and left quickly. The Emperor moved to his usual chair and sat down. Most beings would not have acted, the Emperor said. They would have frozen. They would have looked for guards or authorities. They would have worried about their own safety first. You did none of those things. I didn't have time to think, Jake said. Exactly. You acted on instinct. Your instinct was to protect a child, even one that was not your own species, even at risk to yourself. The Emperor leaned forward. I have spent the past 3 days studying human history and culture. I have learned things that surprise me. Like what? Jake asked. Humans run into burning buildings to save strangers. They jump into water to rescue drowning people. They share food with those who have none. They adopt animals that other species would consider pests. They cry at sad stories. They help others even when there is no benefit to themselves. The Emperor paused. These behaviors are common among your kind. Not rare. Common. Jake shrugged. We're social creatures, we take care of each other. Other social species do not behave this way. They help their own family groups, their own tribes, but humans extend this care to anyone, even to species they have only known for 40 years. Is that strange? It is unique, the Emperor said. In all my centuries of life, I have never encountered a species quite like yours. Woke up and yawned, showing small sharp teeth. The young dragon looked up at Jake and made a happy chirping sound. Jake scratched gently behind the dragon's small horns and closed its eyes in pleasure. My offspring trusts you completely, the Emperor observed. Has excellent instincts for one so young. It knows who means well and who means harm. I would never hurt, Jake said. I know that is clear now. The Emperor was quiet for a moment. I wish to offer you a reward. Name anything, and if it is within my power, you shall have it. Jake shook his head. I don't want to reward your majesty. I'm just glad it's safe. You must want something, wealth, status, a position in my court. I just want to go back to work, Jake said. That's all. The Emperor looked genuinely confused. You would refuse the favor of the Draconian Imperium. I don't need anything, Jake said. I have a job I like, a place to live, and friends. I'm happy with my life. You live in a small apartment. You work long hours for modest pay. You could have so much more. More stuff doesn't make you happy, Jake said. Doing good work and helping people makes you happy. At least it makes me happy. The Emperor stared at him for a very long time. Finally, he stood up. I do not understand you, Jake, but I am beginning to believe that is my failing, not yours. The Emperor looked at his offspring, still curled up contentedly on Jake's lap. Has learned something from you in 3 days that I could not teach in years. It has learned that kindness is not weakness, that compassion is not foolishness. What will happen now? Jake asked. Now, I will make a decision that will change many things. The Emperor moved to the window and looked out at the stars. I am going to study your species more deeply. I am going to send my advisors to Earth and to human colonies. I am going to learn everything I can about what makes humans different. Why? The Emperor turned back to face him. Because my offspring's life was saved by a quality that my species dismissed as weakness. Because a waiter showed more courage than trained warriors. Because I am beginning to suspect that the galaxy has been very wrong about humanity. Jake did not know what to say to that. There is one more thing, the Emperor said. I would like to remain with you for a time, a cultural exchange. My offspring will learn from you, and through it I will learn as well. Is that safe? Jake asked. People might try to hurt to get to you. I will assign guards, the best guards, but will stay with you. The Emperor's voice became firm. My offspring has chosen you as its guardian. In my culture, such bonds are sacred. I will not break this bond. Seemed to sense they were talking about it. The young dragon looked up at its father and chirped hopefully. Very well, Jake said. But I still have to work. Will have to come to the restaurant with me sometimes. That is acceptable. And I'm not changing how I live just because there's an emperor's kid staying with me. I'm still going to eat simple food and live in my simple apartment. For the first time since they had met, Emperor Axe smiled. It was a small smile, barely there, but it was real. I would expect nothing less, the Emperor said. Jake was released from the medical bay the next morning, walked beside him, and 2 draconian guards followed at a respectful distance. When they reached Jake's small apartment, the young dragon explored every corner, chirping with excitement at everything it found. Jake's home was nothing special. 1 bedroom, a small kitchen, a living space with a worn couch and a window that looked out at the station's interior, but loved it. The young dragon found Jake's small collection of books and sniffed each one. It discovered his music player and tilted its head at the sounds. It even tried to help when Jake made dinner, getting in the way more than helping but clearly enjoying itself. That night, curled up at the foot of Jake's bed and fell asleep quickly. Jake lay awake for a while, thinking about everything that had happened. His life had changed completely in a matter of days, but somehow, it still felt right. It felt like exactly where he was supposed to be. News of what happened at the Golden Pavilion spread through the galaxy faster than light speed. Within a week, every major species knew the story. A human waiter had saved the draconian heir. A nobody from a young species had risked his life for the offspring of the most powerful emperor in known space. The reactions were mixed. Some species saw it as proof that humans had hidden value. Others dismissed it as a lucky accident. A few saw it as a political opportunity, and some were deeply worried about what it might mean. Jake tried to ignore all of it. He went back to work at the Golden Pavilion after his recovery. Came with him, supervised by the two draconian guards who now followed Jake everywhere. The young dragon had a special cushion near Jake's serving station and spent its time watching everything with bright, curious eyes. At first, the other customers stared. Some asked questions. A few wanted to take pictures. Jake politely declined the attention and focused on his work. Eventually, people got used to seeing the small blue dragon curled up near the human waiter. But Jake could feel things changing. Other servers looked at him differently now. Alien customers treated him with more respect. Even Bait, his manager, seemed uncertain around him. "You are famous now," Bait said one day during a quiet moment. "Half the station wants to meet you." "I just want to do my job," Jake said. "I know, but things are different now." Bait looked at who was playing with a small ball that Jake had given it. "An emperor's child is sleeping in your apartment. You have draconian guards following you. Ambassadors are asking to speak with you." "I didn't ask for any of this." "I know," Bait said gently. "But it happened anyway. Just be careful, Jake. When you get this much attention, it makes some people nervous." Jake thought about her words often in the days that followed. He noticed how some aliens watched him with suspicion now, how conversations would stop when he entered a room, how guards from other species seemed more alert when he walked past. Notice, too, the young dragon had learned to read Jake's moods, and whenever Jake seemed worried, would press against his leg and make comforting sounds. "I'm okay," Jake would tell the young dragon. "Just a lot of changes." But was changing too. The young dragon was learning human language through a translation device that the Emperor had provided. At first, could only make simple sounds through it, but within 2 weeks, the young dragon was forming words. "Why do humans smile?" asked one evening while they were walking back to Jake's apartment. Jake thought about the question. "Because it makes us feel good, and it makes other people feel good too." "Father never smiles." "Maybe he does, but in a different way. Different species show happiness differently." "You smiled when you were hurt," said. "In the medical place, you smiled at me even when you had pain. I wanted you to know everything was okay." "But you were not okay. You were hurt because of me." Jake stopped walking and knelt down to be at eye level with the young dragon. "Hey, listen to me. You didn't hurt me. The accident hurt me, and I would do it again in a second to keep you safe." "Why?" It was the same question the Emperor had asked. Jake gave the same answer. "Because it was the right thing to do." "But I am not human. I am not your family. Why risk yourself?" Jake smiled. "That's the thing about humans. We don't really think about stuff like that when someone needs help. We just help. It's what we do." Was quiet for a moment. "I want to understand this. Father wants to understand too. He talks about it all the time with his advisors." "What do they say?" "They say humans are weak because they care too much. But Father says that cannot be right. He says if caring makes you run into danger to save others, that is not weakness. That is something else." Jake stood up and they continued walking. "Your father is a smart guy. He is changing his mind about humans. This worries some people." "What people?" "The ambassador. He came to visit Father yesterday. He said Father was being foolish. He said humans are dangerous because they make others emotional. Jake frowned. They were a powerful species known for their cold logic and strategic thinking. They had never been friendly toward humans. What did your father say? He told the ambassador to leave. Then he broke a table, paused. I think father was angry. That night Jake could not sleep. He kept thinking about what had said. Some species were worried about the Emperor's growing interest in humanity. That could be dangerous, for humans, for the Emperor, maybe even for. The next day, Bate pulled Jake aside before his shift started. There are some ambassadors here to see you, she said. They requested a meeting. What kind of ambassadors? 3 different species. They all want to talk about what happened, about your relationship with the Emperor and his offspring. Jake felt a headache starting. I don't have a relationship with the Emperor. I'm just looking after his kid. Jake, the heir to the Draconian Imperium, is living in your apartment. You have changed the Emperor's opinion about humanity. That is a relationship. She was right. Jake knew she was right, but he did not want to be in the middle of galactic politics. He was just a waiter. Still, he agreed to meet with the ambassadors. They came to a private dining room at the restaurant. The first was a tall, thin being from the Federation. The second was a squat, armored creature from the Unity. The third was its silver skin gleaming in the light. They asked many questions. How did he meet the Emperor? What did they talk about? What was his opinion on draconian politics? Was he working for human intelligence? Jake answered honestly. He was not a spy. He was not political. He had saved a child's life and now he was taking care of that child. That was all. The ambassador, Lord Vex, leaned forward. You must understand how this looks. A human from a species that has been nothing in galactic society suddenly has the ear of the most powerful emperor. Some might say this is very convenient. I don't want power, Jake said firmly. I want to go to work, take care of, and live my life. And yet you have refused the emperor's rewards. You have refused wealth and status. This makes you seem even more suspicious. What are you really after? Nothing, Jake said, feeling his anger rise. I'm not after anything. I helped someone who needed help. Why is that so hard to believe? Because no one acts without wanting something in return, Lord Vex said coldly. Jake stood up. Then you don't understand humans at all, and I'm done with this meeting. He walked out, leaving the ambassadors behind. His hands were shaking with anger. The guards followed him silently as he went back to his apartment. Was waiting for him, having stayed behind with the other guards. The young dragon took one look at Jake's face and made a worried sound. I'm okay, Jake said, but he was not okay. He was tired and frustrated and confused about why his simple act of kindness had become so complicated. That evening, Emperor Axe came to visit. The Emperor barely fit in Jake's small apartment, but he squeezed inside and sat on the floor. I heard about your meeting with the ambassadors, the Emperor said. Word travels fast. Lord Vex contacted me. He suggested that you might be working for human intelligence, that you deliberately put yourself in position to save. Jake laughed bitterly. Right. I planned for a coolant pipe to break at the exact moment your kid would be standing near it. That makes sense. I told him he was a fool, the Emperor said. But he is not alone in his suspicions. Many species are nervous about my growing interest in humanity. Then maybe you should back off, Jake said. I don't want to cause problems. You have not caused problems, you have opened my eyes. The Emperor looked at his offspring, who was now curled up between them. Asks me questions every day, questions I cannot answer. Why do humans help strangers? Why do they cry at sad stories? Why do they adopt creatures that other species would kill as pests? My advisors have no answers. Our philosophers have no answers. Maybe there are no complex answers, Jake said. Maybe we just care about others, that's all. It is not just anything, the Emperor said quietly. It is extraordinary, and it is something the galaxy needs to understand. Why? Because for too long, we have valued strength over compassion, power over kindness. We have built a civilization that rewards those who take and dismisses those who give. The Emperor's golden eyes were intense. You saved my child's life without thought of reward. In doing so, you showed me that we have been valuing the wrong things. Jake did not know what to say. The weight of the Emperor's words felt too heavy. I am going to make an announcement at the Galactic Council in 2 weeks, the Emperor continued. I am going to propose a formal alliance between the Draconian Imperium and humanity. I am going to recommend that humans be given equal status among galactic species. Jake's heart started beating faster. That's huge. That will change everything for my people. Yes, and it starts with you, with what you did, with what you taught me. I didn't teach you anything, Jake protested. You taught me that bravery is not just about strength, that value is not measured by power, that sometimes the most important acts are the simple ones. The Emperor reached out and very gently touched Jake's shoulder with one massive claw. You taught me to see beyond what I thought I knew. Stirred and looked up at them both. The young dragon's eyes were bright and happy. It chirped something in Draconian. The Emperor smiled, says you are the best friend it has ever had. Jake felt his eyes sting. He reached down and scratched behind's horns. Kid's not so bad either. That night after the Emperor left, Jake stood at his window and looked out at the stars. Everything was changing. His people would have a chance at real equality. The galaxy would see humans differently. And it all started because he had done what felt right. The 2 weeks before the Galactic Council meeting passed quickly. Jake continued working at the Golden Pavilion and continued learning about humans. The young dragon had grown even more attached to Jake, following him everywhere and asking endless questions about everything. Why do humans have pets? Asked one day while watching a customer's small animal in a carrier. Because it makes us happy to care for other creatures, Jake explained. Even creatures that cannot help you. Especially those creatures. Thought about this for a long time. Humans are very strange, but I like strange. Jake smiled. I like you too, kid. The young dragon had also started school lessons through a remote connection to Draconian tutors, but always told its teachers about what it learned from Jake. How humans shared food with strangers, how they apologized when they made mistakes, how they helped others even when tired. The tutors reported all of this to Emperor Axe, who was collecting information about human behavior from every source he could find. His advisors had visited Earth and 12 human colonies. They had interviewed hundreds of people. They had observed human societies and studied human history. What they found had shaken them. 3 days before the council meeting, the Emperor visited Jake again. He looked tired but determined. My advisors have completed their study, the Emperor said. They found that your actions were not unique. They found thousands of examples of humans risking their lives for strangers, of humans giving without expecting anything back, of humans choosing compassion over logic. We're not perfect, Jake said. We have problems too, wars, crime, conflicts. All species have those things, but not all species run into burning buildings to save people they have never met. Not all species adopt animals that other species would consider food. Not all species create art about kindness and love and sacrifice. The Emperor paused. Your species values goodness in a way that others do not. This is your strength. I don't know if that's true, Jake said. I think we just care about each other. That is exactly what makes you strong. On the day of the council meeting, Jake was nervous. He had been asked to attend in person. Ambassador Kate Williams, the human representative, had specifically requested his presence. She said the galaxy needed to see the human who had changed the Emperor's mind. Jake wore his best clothes, which were still simple compared to what others wore, insisted on coming too, and the Emperor agreed. The young dragon sat beside Jake in the waiting area outside the council chamber, making comforting sounds whenever Jake fidgeted. "You will do fine," said through the translator. "Just be yourself, that is enough." "Thanks, kid." The council chamber was enormous. Representatives from 43 species sat in a great circle. At the center was a speaking platform. Humans had only been allowed observer status until now, not full membership. Ambassador Kate Williams sat in the observer section, watching everything carefully. Emperor Axe was called to speak first. The massive dragon walked to the center platform, his presence commanding immediate silence. Left Jake's side to sit with its father, though the young dragon kept looking back at Jake. "Members of the council," the emperor began, his voice carrying through the chamber. "I stand before you today to speak of something that has troubled me for many decades. We have built a civilization based on strength, power, and strategic value. We reward those who can fight, who can trade, who can offer us something useful. This has served us well in some ways, but it has also made us blind." The chamber was completely silent. "3 weeks ago, my offspring was in danger. A mechanical failure threatened its life. In that moment, a human acted, not because he expected reward, not because of duty or obligation, but because a child needed help and he could provide it." The emperor gestured to Jake. "Jake, please come forward." Jake's heart was pounding as he walked to the platform. Every eye in the chamber was on him. He had never felt so small or so visible at the same time. "This human risked his life for my child," the emperor continued. "He suffered injury protecting, and when I offered him rewards, wealth, status, power, he refused. He wanted nothing but to return to his simple life and his simple work." Murmurs went through the chamber. Some sounded amazed, others sounded skeptical. "I have spent these weeks studying humanity. What I found has changed my understanding of what makes a species valuable." The emperor's voice grew stronger. "Humans possess something rare in this galaxy. They possess instinctive compassion that extends beyond their own kind. They help without calculation. They care without condition. They sacrifice without expectation." Lord Vex stood up from his seat. "Your Majesty, with respect, one human's action does not represent an entire species. This could be an isolated incident." "It is not isolated," the emperor said firmly. "My advisors found thousands of examples. Humans who died saving strangers from floods. Humans who donated organs to people they never met. Humans who adopted children from other species. Humans who created organizations dedicated entirely to helping others." He looked around the chamber. "Can any other species claim the same?" Silence. Then a voice spoke up from the observer section. Ambassador Kate Williams stood. "May I speak?" she asked. The council leader, an ancient crystalline being named Elder, gestured permission. Kate walked to the platform. She was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes. She had been humanity's ambassador for 10 years, fighting for recognition and respect. "I have represented humanity for a long time," Kate said. "I have argued that we deserve a place at this table. I have shown our achievements, our technology, our potential. But today, I want to talk about something else." She looked at Jake and smiled. "I want to talk about what makes us human." Kate gestured to the display screens around the chamber. Images appeared. Humans rescuing animals from disasters. Humans building homes for people they had never met. Humans teaching children in poor villages. Humans caring for the sick and elderly. "This is who we are," Kate said. "We are not the strongest species. We are not the oldest but we care. We help. We try to make things better, not just for ourselves, but for everyone." She paused. "Jake is not special because he is unusual. He is special because he represents what is best in all of us." Jake felt his face grow hot. He had not expected this. Another voice spoke. This time it was Ambassador of the Federation, one of the species that had questioned Jake weeks earlier. "I spoke with Mr. after the incident," said slowly. "I accused him of having hidden motives, but I have been thinking about our conversation, about his anger when I suggested he wanted something in return for his actions. Looked at Jake. I apologize. I judged you by standards that do not apply to your species. More voices joined in. Species that had quietly observed humans over the years began sharing their own stories. A commander spoke of human medics who had treated enemy soldiers. A merchant told of humans who had returned lost cargo when they could have kept it. And scientists described humans who had donated their time to help with research that would not benefit Earth. The stories kept coming. The chamber filled with accounts of human kindness, human compassion, human generosity. Lord Vex remained seated, his silver face unreadable, but even he did not speak against the tide of testimony. Finally, Elder raised one crystalline appendage for silence. This council will now vote on the Emperor's proposal. Should humanity be granted full council membership and equal status among galactic species? The vote was called. One by one, species indicated their choice. 40 votes in favor, 3 abstentions, 0 against. The chamber erupted in sound. Kate Williams was smiling with tears in her eyes. Jake felt dizzy. Humanity had just been recognized as an equal partner in galactic civilization. Emperor Axe looked at Jake. You did this. You changed everything. I just helped the kid, Jake said, his voice shaking. Exactly, the Emperor said. After the council session ended, there was a formal ceremony. Emperor Axe presented Jake with the Order of the Dragon's Wing, the highest civilian honor in the Draconian Imperium. The medal was beautiful, made of crystal and precious metals, shaped like a dragon in flight. This is given to those who show exceptional courage and character, the Emperor said as he placed the medal around Jake's neck. Wear it with pride. I will, Your Majesty, Jake said. Thank you. Bounced with excitement, making happy chirping sounds. The young dragon had learned a lot in the past weeks, but it had never lost its childlike enthusiasm. That evening, Jake returned to his apartment. The medals, the ceremony, the politics, all of it felt distant now. He was just tired and ready to be home. Curled up on the couch beside him. What happens now? The young dragon asked. I go back to work tomorrow, Jake said. You continue your lessons, things go back to normal. But everything has changed. Not everything, I am still me, you are still you, we are still friends. Made a happy sound and pressed closer to Jake. I am glad you saved me that day. Me too, kid, me too. 1 month later, Jake was working his usual shift at the Golden Pavilion. Sat at his station, now a familiar sight to everyone. The young dragon had grown a little bigger and was starting to learn how to fly in short bursts. A family of humans came in for dinner. They had their children with them, 2 small kids who stared at with wide eyes. Is that a real dragon? One child whispered. Sure is, Jake said with a smile. Can we say hello? Jake looked at who nodded eagerly. The young dragon loved meeting new people now, especially children. The kids approached slowly, lowered its head so they could pet its scales. The children laughed with delight and their parents watched with happy smiles. At a nearby table, Emperor Axe sat with several other draconian officials. They were having a diplomatic dinner with human representatives. The sight of humans and draconians eating together, talking and laughing, would have been impossible just weeks ago. But it was happening now, and it was happening in part because Jake had done something simple and right. Bait came over to Jake's station. You know, I expected you to quit after everything that happened. Figured you would take some fancy job with the government or something. Why would I do that? Jake asked. I like it here. Even after becoming famous, even after changing galactic politics. Jake looked around the restaurant, at the families enjoying meals, at the aliens from different species sitting together, at playing with the human children, at the Emperor watching his offspring with pride and happiness. This is where I belong, Jake said. Helping people, serving good food, making sure everyone has a nice time, that is what makes me happy." Bates smiled. "You are a strange one, Jake, but I am glad you work here." As the evening went on, Jake continued his work. He served meals, took orders, and made sure his customers were satisfied. It was simple work, honest work, good work. And that was enough. Watched him the entire time, those bright eyes full of admiration and love. The young dragon had learned many things about humans in the past weeks, about their kindness, their courage, their compassion. But the most important thing had learned was this: sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who never wanted to be heroes at all. Sometimes the most important acts are the simple ones. And sometimes, changing the galaxy is as easy as doing what feels right. Jake had saved a child's life without thinking about reward or recognition. In doing so, he had shown the galaxy that humanity had value beyond strength or technology. He had shown that compassion, kindness, and basic decency were not weaknesses but strengths. And he had done it all while just trying to be a good person. That night, as Jake walked home with Trotting beside him and guards following at a respectful distance, he looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, on Earth and on human colonies across space, people were living their lives, working their jobs, helping their neighbors, caring for their families. They were all heroes in their own way. They just did not know it yet. But the galaxy was learning. And it was learning because one waiter had shown them the truth, that the measure of a species is not in their weapons or their wealth, but in their willingness to help others. Jake smiled to himself and kept walking home. Tomorrow he would go to work again. He would serve food and take care of his customers, and would be there, learning more about what it meant to be human. It was a good life, a simple life, the kind of life that made the galaxy a better place, one small act of kindness at a time.